Very much to the organizing committee for selecting this abstract to be presented. Today we're going to talk about the characterization of pregnancy losses between 30 and 210 days of gestation in dairy cows in Argentina. And just as an introduction, for many years the methodologies to classify and to study pregnancy losses has been the one by the Committee of Bovine Reproduction and Nomenclature of 1972, where we divide early embryonic losses from day 0 to 24, late embryonic losses from day 25 to 45, and fetal losses from day 46 to 270. And in fact, most of the papers that you see for pregnancy losses are those that describe some type of either synchronization protocol and then look to the first pregnancy rate to the first service, and then look to the losses of that pregnancy rate, and maybe in some of the studies they resynchronize and then they see what are the pregnancy losses to the second synchronization. More recently, there has been a second approach that was proposed by Milo Wilbank, where this is more practical for those who work in practice, and is to look with a different period. That will be the first period, pivotal period, that will be around the first week of pregnancy, and this is very much related to the people who do embryo transfer. Then we have from day 8 to 27, and this period is just because most of the practitioners are not able to do pregnancy diagnosis until about day 28 or so. So this is one of the windows that pretty much we don't have much information. Then we have period 3, which goes from 28 to 60, and finally we have period 4 that goes from 60 to 90. Today I'm going to focus the study from day 28 all over to 210, so we'll comprise period 3 and period 4. So the objective of this study was to characterize the pregnancy loss in grazing dairy cows between 30 and 210 days of gestation in a large commercial dairy farm in Argentina. And we did a retrospective study, including a total of 14,153 records of 1, 2, and 3rd pregnancies and on within the same lactation from cows that were in 1, 2nd, and 3rd plus lactations, for a period that was from January 1st, 2010 to December 31st, 2016. Pregnancy diagnosis was performed every 2 weeks by the practitioner using ultrasound, and was done between 30 and 44 days post-AI, and pregnancy was recorded as single or double during the diagnosis. Pregnancy losses after confirmation of pregnancy were classified. There were 3,504, and basically they were classified in 4 categories. Number 1 was when the cow had a dead embryo at pregnancy diagnosis, and it was seen when the practitioner was doing the ultrasound. Number 2, when cows were diagnosed not pregnant at the pregnancy reconfirmation between 60 and 90 days post-insemination. So first was diagnosed pregnant, then was open. The 3rd was cows that returned to estrus and were diagnosed not pregnant at the next examination after detected heat. So the cow was diagnosed pregnant, but then was seen in heat and it was confirmed that it was open. And finally, cows that were diagnosed pregnant and returned to estrus 30 days after pregnancy diagnosis and were inseminated. So we look to the percent of days of pregnancy losses, the days of gestation to pregnancy loss, the days in milk to pregnancy loss, and basically then we look to the numbers and the interactions. And here you can see pretty much the pregnancy losses. This is just to remind you, here we have not only the first pregnancy losses, but we have the ones that happened farther on in the lactation. We have a few cows from these 3,500 cows we have like 10 or 15 cows that have more than 5 pregnancy losses consequently in one lactation. So the cow got pregnant, lost, pregnant, lost, pregnant, lost, pregnant, lost. See? So that's why we, for practical purpose to summarize the information, we just put pregnancy 1, 2, and 3 plus, which 3 plus means 3, 4, and 5, and so on. And here is the lactation number, and here are the numbers, the percent loss for each category. So for example, for the first pregnancy, for all the 3 lactations, we have a 24% pregnancy loss. For the second pregnancy, it was 23, and for the third pregnancy and plus was 18, and the total was about 23%. So as we go on with the pregnancies, the losses diminish a little bit, but it was not significant. So the pregnancy losses were similar between lactation number and between pregnancy number. The days of gestation to pregnancy loss. Here we are looking how many days after she was diagnosed, she had the pregnancy loss. And here we can see the same. Here this is the median days, this is the quartile, the lower quartile, and this is the higher quartile. And this is the pregnancy and lactation. And here we can see that as soon as we went the lactation on, for example, first, second, and third lactation, we had an increase in the number of days that the gestation was lost. So, for example, the days of gestation to the pregnancy loss were different with lactation number. The lactation 1 had longer days of gestation to the loss, 95, compared, for example, to the third lactation that was 81. So there was about 2 weeks difference between lactation 1 and lactation 3 and plus in terms of when the pregnancy happened. So it reduced the ones that were lactation 1, the pregnancy loss occurred farther in lactation compared to the third and plus lactation. And here you have an histogram just to have to make things easier, so you can visualize when the pregnancy losses took place along the gestation. So you can see that most of the pregnancy losses occur during the first 45 to 60 days, and then they went along all the way until day 50 and plus, and about 70% of the accumulated losses took place around 120, 110 days of gestation. So that means that most of the times these pregnancies losses occur early in the lactation and in the gestation, sorry, and then the cow got pregnant again and again lost the pregnancy somewhere around always between 45 to 60, 70 days of gestation. When we look to the days of lactation that the pregnancy occurred, we see that there's a tendency to have the first pregnancy around 212, the second around 210, and the third around 206 days of gestation. And here you can see the median, and here you can see the first quartile and the fourth quartile, the third quartile, sorry, of the median days. And here when we look to the pregnancy number, we see that pregnancies, the days in milk to the pregnancy were different, and pregnancy 1 had lower days in milk to the pregnancy loss compared to pregnancy 2 and compared to pregnancy 3. So as soon as the cows went having more pregnancies, the pregnancy loss occurred a little bit later. And here you see the days of lactation at when the pregnancy took place. And this is the histogram. So you see that most of the pregnancy losses occur between day 120 and 270. And we can see that about 70% of the losses occurred around 250 days of gestation. So in conclusion, the prevalence of pregnancy loss was similar for all lactations and for all pregnancy numbers. The days of gestation to pregnancy loss were 14 days longer in lactation 1 compared to lactation 3. And the days in milk to pregnancy losses was 140 days later in lactation in pregnancy 2 compared to pregnancy 1, and 127 days later in lactation in pregnancy 3 compared to pregnancy 2. You have to think that, you know, the cow had one pregnancy, then she lost it, then she had another pregnancy, then she lost it. So that process took about, between she lost the pregnancy, she got pregnant again, and she lost the pregnancy again, it took about between 120 and 140 days. And that repeated over time. So this is the information I have. I will be happy to answer you any questions.